The discovery of penicillin by Alexander Fleming in 1928 and the subsequent development of antibiotics has revolutionized the treatment of infectious diseases. However, as their use has increased, bacteria have adapted and found ways to defend themselves.
This is one of the busiest border crossing points between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and that's why it is also a key battleground in the fight against polio. Medical staff try to vaccinate as many children as they can under the age of 5. 2 drops of the vaccine, a mark on the finger, and they're on their way in less than a minute. Afghanistan and Pakistan are 2 of the 3 remaining countries in the world where the disease is still endemic. The number of cases is rising in Pakistan. The Taliban here are against immunization, saying it's a cover for U.S. spying. Vaccinators have been shot dead, bombed, and taken hostage. Polio awareness is generally higher in Afghanistan, but the porous border means tens of thousands cross daily between the countries, a challenge for healthcare workers. Efforts to fight polio in Afghanistan are seeing success. The number of cases has dropped dramatically in the past 2 years, and vaccination programs are slowly expanding. But there's still a long way to go to reach the global goal of polio eradication by 2018.
Now, a mystery illness out west that has concerned parents phoning their doctors tonight. Strange symptoms that come on fast and strike children virtually without warning, reminiscent of a disease thought to have been long vanquished, polio. ABC's Cecilia Vega now with the new clues.
Doctors thought 4-year-old Sophia Jarvis had asthma. Then came the weakness in her left leg and paralysis in her left arm. Doctors say Sophia is one of 5 children in California showing signs of a mysterious polio-like illness, and they are investigating as many as 25 more. Their average age 12, all unable to move some or all of their limbs.
There can be some mild improvements, but overall the level of paralysis remains severe.
The children had all been vaccinated against polio, and researchers suspect this may be a related virus. They are asking doctors around the country to look for other cases. The CDC is monitoring, but cautions most of these polio-like viruses do not end in paralysis. Sophia Jarvis's case appears to be an extremely rare one.
The polio outbreak in Syria could pose a new threat to Europe, according to 2 German infectious disease experts. In a letter written to the medical journal The Lancet, doctors Martin Eichner and Stefan Brockmann warn that the virus may well spread to Europe as thousands of Syrians flee the civil war.
There may be a risk of importing the infection into European settings. And we have been vaccinating here with the inactivated polio vaccine for the last 10, 15 years, depending on the country. And this vaccine is perfect in preventing disease, but it's not completely perfect in preventing the infection of individuals.
The risk is especially high in regions of Europe with low vaccination coverage, such as Bosnia, Ukraine, and Austria. For many, polio is a disease of the past, a highly infectious virus that attacks the nervous system. In many countries, polio has been virtually eradicated by mandatory vaccination programs, and Syria was one of them. The last time polio was detected in Syria was more than a decade ago, in 1999. But now, the World Health Organization has confirmed at least 10 cases of polio inside Syria. Experts say because only 1 in 200 people infected develops paralysis, the virus can spread silently for months before an outbreak is detected.
We have to make sure that the refugees coming to Europe are vaccinated, polio and for other diseases like measles and so on.
UNICEF and the WHO have announced the largest ever united immunization response in the Middle East, aiming to vaccinate about 20 million children in 7 countries and territories. But with so many people fleeing the violence in Syria, and with so much of the country inaccessible because of the fighting, there is concern that the nightmare disease could endanger several regions of the world.
A fatal disease that doctors had been struggling for days to identify has been confirmed by the government as the hemorrhagic fever, better known as Ebola. It's claimed at least 34 lives. On Wednesday, the head of epidemics prevention of the Guinea Health Ministry was still trying to figure out what the disease was.
The investigation team is going from village to village to figure out what was the source of this. That's why, for the moment, we can't rule out Lassa fever, Ebola, or leptospirosis, or the other sicknesses that cause hemorrhagic fevers.
The government received confirmation that the disease was Ebola from a laboratory in France. Residents say they're afraid.
I'm scared because it affects me.
Ebola has a fatality rate of up to 90%. It has never been recorded in Guinea. The World Health Organization says similar symptoms to Ebola have been reported in neighboring Sierra Leone.
A virus that kills baby pigs is spreading throughout the country. The U.S. Department of Agriculture says California and Wyoming are the latest states to report having pigs infected with the porcine epidemic diarrhea. That brings the total to 22 states where pig farms have the virus. The first case in the U.S. was reported back in April, and since then, thousands of piglets have died.
Right now, we're neck deep in flu season, and the virus that's killing and infecting most Americans now, the flu virus, is still H1N1. This swine flu virus that emerged in 2009 has killed over 10,000 Americans, infected 60 million Americans, and that virus definitively tied to factory farming practices, the same practices that have now led to this diarrhea virus.
A silvery slick of sardines carpeted the Marina waters. An estimated 1 million fish turned up dead Tuesday in Redondo Beach, California. Boaters at the King Harbor Marina awoke to find small fish floating everywhere.
Another one over there?
City authorities are scooping up the sardines by hand. They'll also have to net a 12 to 18-inch layer of dead fish at the bottom of the marina. The silvery slick brought out plenty of spectators.
It makes me wonder what's in the water.
The California Department of Fish and Game says the massive die-off isn't because of pollution.
All the preliminary investigations say that this is an unusual but naturally occurring event.
He says it's an unusual sight, but not unprecedented.
The ocean was stirred up last night enough where the sardines schooled together and they came around the breakwater and came into a closed harbor where there's not enough oxygen and they ran out of air.
They choked to death in oxygen-poor water. City officials say it may take a week to clean up the mess. By then, the boaters may be choking on the stench of rotting fish.
This is a serious public health issue. We know that there are serious consequences from extreme heat, and that can be increased hospitalisations and, unfortunately, increased deaths.
Overnight, lightning moved into the northwestern part of the state in central Victoria that saw 256 new fires start. Out of those, 15 fires are still listed as going and being worked on by aircraft and crews on the ground. And you must say well done to the fire crews to be out there in this temperature to work in those conditions.
In a normal year, California's Folsom Lake looks like this. But this is what it looks like right now, at dangerously low levels. The Sierra Nevada mountains usually store much of California's drinking water in the form of snow. On the left, last year. On the right, this year, with just 12% of the usual snow. State health officials say 17 communities and water districts, mostly in rural areas, are now within 100 days of running dry. Digging new wells and hauling in water are two ways they will be helped. California Governor Jerry Brown is calling on residents to do whatever it takes to conserve.
Don't flush more than you have to. Don't shower longer than you need to. And turn the water off when you're shaving or brushing your teeth.
Brown declared a drought emergency 2 weeks ago. He's asking Californians to voluntarily use 20% less water, but that could change.
Every day this drought goes on, we're going to have to tighten the screws on what people are doing.
The San Francisco Bay Area has seen less than 10% of the rainfall it ordinarily sees by this point in its rainy season. Forecasters say rain would have to fall heavily every day through May to bring conditions back to normal.
The quake did more than rattle nerves. It sent bottles flying off store shelves, mirrors crashing to the ground.
When I felt it, I felt like the world was going to end.
It wasn't the big one, but it was big enough. Magnitude 5.1. Its epicenter, south of Los Angeles in Orange County, the OC, near the city of La Habra. The shaker wasn't strong enough to cause major structural damage or serious injuries, but it did trigger a small rock slide that overturned this car. The driver's okay. A few water main breaks were also blamed on the quake. The ground shook just after 9 Friday night in the 6th inning of the Dodgers game.
We might be experiencing, I should say, an earthquake here.
Everyone just stood still, like, is it happening? Is that an earthquake?
This quake comes less than 2 weeks after news anchors ducked for cover during the so-called St. Patrick's Day shaker.
More problems for a troubled
earthquake.
Yep,
we're having an earthquake.
Now, as we mentioned, seismologists are particularly worried about this quake because they think this fault may be reawakening. We haven't heard from this particular fault, they don't think, in several decades. They believe this is the same fault responsible for the Whittier quake in the 1980s that killed 8 people and caused more than $350 million in damage. Beyond the reason they really don't want to see this fault wake up again, it runs right through downtown LA.